Hello and welcome to the 23rd Annual Garden State Film Festival. My name is Emily DeSimone, and here with me today I have Michaela Schwer, director, producer, and editor for the documentary feature, The Kids Are Not All Right. Michaela, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm
Thank
excited.
you for joining, of course. So please tell our live viewers a bit about this documentary feature.
Sure. The Kids Are Not All Right is a film about the long-lasting impacts of the troubled teen industry. We filmed for about 9 years, following three main stories of people and their experiences in these programs, which is a network of for-profit institutions that claim to fix teenagers through mostly tough love practices. And so we also wanted to look at the long-term impacts of that. So each one of our participants, it's really like 20 years after they went through these, and we wanted to see how that experience really impacted them and stays with them today.
Wow. So that's a long time commitment, 9 years putting into this project. I know I've heard a little bit about like Paris Hilton. Is this kind of similar to that?
Yeah, very similar. Paris went to a few programs that are exactly the same that we're talking about in our film. And that's, there were programs all around the country and different types of programs. Some are wilderness excursions, some are residential, more like boot camps. So we wanted to show a few different experiences of that.
So, what inspired you to want to get involved with this documentary? And if I may ask, were you intending it to take 9 years?
So I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I knew a lot of kids who were sent away. A kid who was a few years older than me tragically passed away pretty horrifically in one of these programs. And I hadn't really thought about it until 2015. I read Maya Salovitz's book, Help at Any Cost. And she went into that story and other stories that really just hit home for me. I really had never thought about when kids come out of these programs and maybe turn to drugs or don't really assimilate back into society. I think a lot of people just thought, oh, well, they went to this place, so they're a bad kid. And nobody really stopped to think about maybe something bad happened in these programs. The suicide rate is horrifically high. And John Martin Crawford had died by suicide in October of 2015. And as I was interviewing Maya for a different project. And so I connected that week with Liz Ionelli, who was one of John Martin Crawford's best friends. And we just started a conversation, and I really didn't know where it was going to go, but I certainly did not think it was going to take 9 years. But through the course of the film, certain events continued to happen. And certainly with Liz, she really went on a journey that needed that 9 years. I mean, we had a big event, an arrest just last spring. And so that was really something that I'm really glad we continued filming for in order to get that.
If I may ask, what is your background, or would you like to enlighten our viewers a bit about your background in the industry and what led you? I mean, obviously we know what led you into doing this project, but I would love to know a bit about like if you have prior works or future works coming up.
Sure. I mostly work as a documentary editor. And so that is really my day-to-day job. This is my second feature documentary. My first one was called Don't Tell Anyone, No Le Digas a Nadie. And that came out in 2015. I played on POV and PBS, and it was a great project. So
Congratulations. That's awesome.
yeah.
So, you're talking about how with this project you met with people that were associated with this industry, but what was this process like for you? I mean, when you're investing 9 years into a project, would you say that this took, if I may get personal with it, like what kind of emotional like toll did it end up taking, or just overall, what would you say, if it's any different than what your works have been like before? How would you say this process was like for you, and how it's impacted you as a filmographer, director, editor, and such?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think it impacted me a lot. I mean, I do try to build relationships with the people in my films, and I do always want to make sure that anything I'm making is representative of the stories they want out there as well, particularly survivors. And so, this film took a lot of twists and turns. I think in the beginning we had a lot of experts, we had journalists, lawyers, reporters. Because we actually weren't sure that people would believe the stories that survivors were telling. Um, that actually is something, Paris Hilton's story came out in 2020, and with the boom of interest and the news stories happening there, we actually felt we were able to take those out, which is what we wanted in the first place. We really wanted this to be a survivor-led personal story. And so there are many stories and projects out there, and I think that's been also really incredible, is that each one's different, each one's lending, a different voice to the story, a different angle to the story. And yeah, I think for me, it was just very personal to feel like I was going through this to try to do justice to these stories, to make sure they're getting heard. And yeah, I mean, they're really horrific stories. And so, really trying to make sure we were taking care with those, taking care of how that was impacting the people in our films, the crew and the team. But ultimately, I think we were all pretty aligned and just wanting to make sure we got the stories out in the right way.
Well, I mean, I do think that that is so important, is to make sure that you are telling something that, feels true to yourself and for those involved. So thank you so much for being able to share such I mean, a vulnerable but very serious issue that we have going on that I think that we don't hear enough about at all, unfortunately. So, with that said, how did you find the Garden State Film Festival? I mean, I know that you said you've had some experience in more than just some experience in this industry, but how'd you hear about us? And congratulations on being accepted in.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for having us. We're really excited to play. We had our premiere at Dances with Films in New York, and that was incredible. And we also, having an East Coast premiere and playing on the East Coast continuously is pretty important to us, because there are a lot of survivors in that area, and we want to make sure that the film is available to get more and more people to see it, and engage in these conversations. And so we were really looking at festivals we wanted to play, and Garden State was top of that list. So
I mean, with such a I don't want to say like a wonderful documentary, but I mean, it's how do I say it's a wonderful documentary, even though do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like such a,
I appreciate it.
yes, of course, like it's not a wonderful topic, but this is a wonderful documentary. So it is such an honor to be able to screen like this and the work that's gone into it. Because I mean, when you have something that's, I'm just still so like in shock that it's taken 9 years, because like that means that, there really was just so much put into it and so much like thoughtfulness and time, and obviously time, effort. And so this really is just wonderful to have. So thank you so much for that. Do you have any future plans for this work or future works coming up for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we there is a trial coming up for this project, and so we are staying tuned for that. And there were a lot of stories that we filmed that we actually weren't able to get into the film. So I think we
Okay.
are really looking to try to do a really robust impact campaign and take the film out, to therapists, to parents, to survivors, to teachers, to everyone in the community, to really have engaged discussions around this. So that's our plan for the film, really for the next year or so. And then I'm kind of taking a break in terms of directing for the moment. So I'm moving on to some other edit projects, while we really try to get this film out there.
Awesome. Well, with that, I mean, is there anything, that I haven't covered with you in this interview? Anything that you'd love to talk about, like with this process for you or with your work?
No, I mean, I think we just really want to engage people in this conversation. And so, I encourage people to come to the screening, but also to really, speak with Liz will be there and other survivors will be there. And I just think it's a really important conversation. And the more we get people talking about it in a really personal way, to really know the story, I think, we're hoping to make some change through it. So we really welcome those discussions and, welcome people reaching out to us as well.
Will we be seeing you there as well?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome. Okay, well, I mean, Michaela, thank you so much for joining me today. You guys, the documentary feature The Kids Are Not All Right will be screening at the Berkeley Continental on Saturday, March 29th at 9:15 p.m. Again, Michaela, thank you so much for taking this time with me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I really am excited for this to screen and for everyone to get to see it.
Thank you so much. Excited to see you there.